Hey, Vincent.
Good morning.
Okay, so Vincent, well, first off, let folks know a little bit about you, and then I have some broad marketing questions that I need some guidance on.
All right. My name is Vincent Kovar, and I'm a fractional CMO, currently focusing on SMBs, especially startups who usually are pre-seed. So we
Mhm.
look at the foundations a lot about how to get them to that first seed round or the big round. So, and I work across all kinds of industries, everything from dating apps to games. My background originally was in gaming,
Hmm.
um, but also AI and blockchain.
All right, then. Well, then this question should be right up your alley, I hope. Okay, so it's been, a crazy couple of years in business and marketing, right? Uh, are you seeing any marketing strategy shifts, let's say going into 2025? Like what's sort of the big moving blocks or pieces that companies are talking about and dealing with now as they go into the next 12 months?
I think we've gone through a couple years of just enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So we hit blockchain, and everything was all about blockchain for a moment, and then that kind of had its winter. And we're doing the same thing with AI,
Hmm.
I think, especially Gen AI. We were all very excited to be able to type in something, and something would come out. And we were so excited that I think a lot of us were not paying attention as much as we should have been as to what we got out. Was it something we actually wanted, or were
Hmm.
we just so delighted to see it happen? So I think in both fields, we're really seeing a shift in marketing, especially towards back to the foundations. We're really seeing like what is the blockchain for without all the enthusiasm and hype and kind of going back to the boring business. And it turns out the blockchain is great for things like recording financial transactions or securing the Internet of Things or supply chain management, stuff that wasn't doesn't sound so exciting, but is actually really foundational to all of
Yeah.
business.
I heard, I talked to a CTO in Ireland last year, and he said blockchain's really coming into its own. This was about 12 months ago. He said, but for most of its existence so far, it's been a solution looking for a problem.
Yes, we were. I think we were just so excited about it. It did these things, and there was
Mhm.
a lot of money being made. Unfortunately, about 90% of that kind of fell back to earth. And so we're really seeing exciting things, but they're not exciting on the surface. They don't make great articles and
Right.
headlines. Um, the same thing with AI. We see all these headlines about we don't understand AI. It's a black box, and it's very frightening. Um, but if we look back at the 1930s, we saw almost exactly the same thing with recorded music. Everyone was like,
Mhm.
the robots are coming to take your job. Uh, And obviously, we survived the 1930s and went forward merrily from there. So with AI, the big shift in marketing I see is insights. It's
Mhm.
less about what Gen AI pumps out, whether it be copy or art or what have you, but really what it tells us. It's able to analyze vast amounts of numbers that just a human brain can't really do.
Right.
Um,
So less about what's in the company that's going to go out and more about what's outside the company that's coming in, like metrics and data.
Definitely metrics and
Yeah.
data. And I think one of the things we're going to see in marketing especially is where those two things intersect, where blockchain and AI start meeting up. Because right
Mm.
now, a lot of our metric measurements are not great for
Right.
blockchain. And as we shift to the semantic web and it becomes more machine readable, we're going to see AI being able to say what is happening in the world much more accurately than it does now.
Mm.
I hope, knock on wood.
Oh, okay. Then, like, it's been like a weird couple of years, right? 2025. No one knows what it's gonna look like. But how have you seen sort of like the certainly the economy? Like, how's it been affecting the companies that you're working with and the companies you're talking to? How's it been affecting their marketing, like budgets or their priorities even?
Well, I work with a lot of startups or early phase companies, and what I'm seeing is that a lot of them were so focused on building a product. They're very excited about their idea that they're skipping some of the foundational steps. I think what we call
Mm,
marketing, and really under that umbrella
right.
is product marketing, growth marketing. It kind of gets, we make up all these terms to really describe a core function. So we're ending up bringing a product to market that hasn't really found its fit. I see that happen frequently. So there's this sudden urge. Usually, it comes up in communities online where people say, "We need marketing." And I always want to say, "Well, what do you mean by that? What are you saying you need growth? Are you saying you need insights? Are you need product development?"
Right.
So that's a big one. And I see a lot of companies, marketing is often probably right after HR in terms of the one that gets the budgets cut and the people cut, which I think is not just personally, but I think it as a business choice is a big mistake, um, because it's essentially shutting one eye when you're looking at the market, maybe
Yeah.
even both eyes. So they're like, we need to survive this storm, but we're not going to look at it. Um, so that's I think unfortunate, and I see people, startup founders, and even larger corporate, enterprise entities, that lack of understanding about what marketing is and what can do for you, conflating it with sales, which I think is a great function that has its own purpose, um, but really taking away its advisory role uh, really hampers a lot of companies. So I'm seeing, hopefully, again, knocking on wood, that companies will really kind of start saying, "Oh, we need this information. We need to be able to talk to our AI and ask the right questions." Um, because it really is. I mean, any data scientist will tell you AI is a great tool, but you have to know what questions to ask it. I call AI the drunken genie. It's very enthusiastic about giving you whatever you ask for, but it may make things up entirely, or who knows what it may do.
Fair enough. Okay, so you're talking to a lot of companies, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know how much you talk with other marketers. Most marketers that I know are in like online groups and stuff with other. Here's my scenario. Imagine that a friend of yours comes to you and says, "Hey Vincent, so my kid graduated from college, wants to be in marketing, and just got their first job as like the most junior person in a marketing team." You're on the other end of that, right?
Mhm.
So the other end of that sort of like, ladder. So do you have any advice for my first job in marketing kid about how to sort of, conduct themselves or plan or just aim in the right direction over the next couple of decades in their career?
Looking at jobs, just on if you scan LinkedIn
Yeah.
and you choose the people that maybe you think are most successful, what I'm seeing is that the average job tenure is about a year and 4 months to
Right.
a year and 10 months. I'm not seeing, unless they get promoted within the same company,
Yeah.
but I'm not seeing people stick around. And that's actually really encouraging, not just for the marketers coming in, but for the companies themselves. Because each one of those shifts indicates a strong learning curve, a skill upgrade. There's something that's happening there that actually makes somebody more desirable. I wish companies were more invested in developing people internally. Even shifting them between departments, I think, can be really valuable. But for that kid starting out, I would say think like a VC or an investor.
Mhm.
And when you're doing a pitch deck, uh, the plan right now is you plan your exit slide first. It may not be first, it may not even be in the final deck, but you need to know what your exit plan is. And I think that is the most important advice. Are you going to grow here? Is there a growth path? Or are you here to gather some skills, some portfolio pieces, add value? You always want to add value to any employer and then exit. And if so, where are you exiting to?
Well,
Because there are so many branches of marketing to choose from.
now you've spurred a question that I hadn't thought about asking. Imagine that you're not like in your very first job, just starting out, right, in marketing, but you're, somewhere above that. Could be anywhere, mid-level, high level, right? Now, you're you managed to get some insider insight that the company is going to reduce its headcount in marketing like 6 months from now. That would be an amazing amount of insight, right? Nobody gets 6 months. But so, like, what advice would you give someone who came to you and says, like, Vincent, like, what do I need to be doing now so that if I'm one of the people that gets caught up in one of these rounds of layoffs, that I'm good to go?
Well, almost everybody is going to get caught up in a round of
Yeah.
layoffs. I think that's something we're seeing that didn't used to be the case. I'm seeing a lot of people, especially in the gaming industry, who are profoundly shocked that they're being laid off.
Yeah.
They had achieved a certain level, and they work for a
Right.
AAA, company. So I think the thing is to be prepared for that shock, even if it does not happen, and then to make that exit plan. And we're being told a lot of conflicting advice. Large companies. I live almost literally between Microsoft and Amazon,
Mm.
and they tell you in the interviews, they ask you, what did you specifically contribute? We want your particular metrics. Don't start
Mhm.
with we, say I. And then conversely, everybody says you must be a team player and collaborate.
Yeah.
And so it's being prepared for that, building a portfolio constantly. And even if you stay, are deeply entrenched with a company, being able to go into a meeting and say, here's my contribution, even if that is, here's my team's contribution, here's the roles we all played. Um, Being able to do that to show value at every moment, to be really ready. And even if that value is we're 75% done, almost project management talk of this, and that's how much we project this to outcome. Um, again, going back to the startups and those pitch decks, what is your TAM? What is your
Yeah.
revenue? Show me a chart. And I think a lot of companies want to see that. So that's something I would recommend if somebody is worried about layoffs. Um, Make yourself a pitch deck. I think Reid Hoffman has a great book called The Startup of You, and be prepared to make yourself a startup.
Do you think, uh, in your conversations and working with clients and so on, are there any industries where if someone said like, "Hey, I want to stay in kind of the same marketing role, but I'm willing to change industries"? Are there any industries that are like you think are hot or are getting hotter now
I
that
think
someone could look
consumer
at?
packaged goods
Yeah.
are going to be surprisingly hot. The tech field, I think, is having it's
Mm.
still having its romance with AI. They think they can get rid of everybody and
Hmm.
replace everybody with. And the issue that we're going to come around with is really the easiest people to replace are many of the executives. And so we're going to see startups who are
Right.
very, very lean. So I think that's going to be we're going to see startups across industries coming out and being able to produce faster without these big cumbersome silos and departments that we see at enterprise level companies.
That makes sense. Um, okay, so given all that, do you think there are any like common mistakes that companies are making right now, or things they should stop doing as we sort of look into 2025? Like guys, like this is not going to work out, or this is too expensive for what you typically get these days, or this is not going to last, and so maybe like stop doing X. Right? Are there any common mistakes you're seeing across industries or across companies?
Yeah, well, my a lot of my background is in gaming, and
Hmm.
when I enter early talks with a company, I'm seeing some things happening, especially in blockchain gaming, over and over, where I find that the communities hit about 35,000 to 40,000 and stop growing.
I didn't know there was a magic number for that,
I,
so
you
that's
know, I,
cool.
I it's anecdotal and it's
Right.
completely just based on my observation, so I
Typically,
could be
an,
wrong, but I
an
keep
invisible
seeing.
threshold seems to exist, though.
And what I think is that we're failing to jump the gap in many industries.
Hmm.
We want to go forward so fast, we want to grow that we don't think about, is it sustainable growth, is it profitable growth? Um, you look at all the books of business over, jump a couple decades back and a couple decades back, and the hot new, we're going to blitz scale, we're going to ramp up. We always have a term, and usually once those terms become ingrained,
Hmm.
that's when companies start to make mistakes. Some time back, I started talking about we would talk about marketing campaigns or websites, and we wanted everything to be viral, sticky, addictive, and we don't use those words in any other way that is positive. If somebody said, "Here, reach in this bag, it's sticky and viral,"
Yeah.
we wouldn't put our hand in the bag. But you go into a business meeting and you start babbling these terms, and everyone gets very excited. And I think that is one of the first signs that we are divorcing ourselves from our customers and our industry when we start talking about the users, the customers, the clients, the players as other than us.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
That's
the
really
other
good.
mistake is when we assume they're exactly like us.
Yeah.
I call that the trap of awesome. We see that in games, especially. Somebody has a game, it's great. It's the most brilliant game there's ever been, and all their friends tell them they're right. Um, and they're going to probably hit that 35 to 40,000 threshold and not know what happened. Um, and so I think marketing's big mistake is they just needs to listen more. Um, Not only to the market and to each other, which I think is important to network with each other and see what's going on, but really listening to what the customer is worried about.
Yeah.
Uh, if they're worried about the environment and how much AI and blockchain electricity are using, really dig into that and figure out how to resolve that.
I talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of marketing people a year. And just between you and me and whoever eventually sees this. And there's, I don't have like, I didn't do marketing in school. I didn't do it in college. And I think either people pick up on it or it's just the culture or it's what they learned in their degree and move. Is that they seem to focus on translating what the company wants to say to the market, but they don't seem to put any emphasis on translating what the market says back into the company in a way that so like everyone will understand it with a common terminology.
And
And oh,
we see that with companies will hire these very expensive consultants to come in for a couple weeks,
mhm.
and they're going to shake everything up. And we see them telling the company what the company wants to hear, but was just afraid to admit. But we think about like when a consultant comes in, they say your employees don't really worry about their salaries; they're worried about how empowered they are.
Yeah.
Well, the managers and the executives who hired those consultants need to remember that they're the ones paying the salary. So, of course, they're going to say
Mhm.
what they want to hear. And I think that's something that I think that's where we see the consultants who really make great success and shake up industries is they're willing to kind of say the awkward truths and say like, here's something, provide an actionable insight, not just a criticism. But here's your problem, here's your real problem, and here's what you can do about it. I think that second step is missing too often.
I agree. Okay, so I have two more questions for you
Okay.
as we wind down. One, is there anything that you've come across or you've seen or using any kind of tool, strategy, communication channel, platform? Is there anything that you think is underrated and that companies should look at or use that they
Um,
most aren't?
yeah, narrow AI, I think, is being underused. Much of the AI that is out there is really just an API to one of the other existing models.
Hmm.
Um, we're seeing that flatlining. There's a great website called there's an AI for that.com,
Hmm.
all one word. And we saw it go from 3,000 uh, applications to 7 to 12. And now it's kind of flatlining out because everyone's, kind of done all the easy ones.
Right.
And so where I see some of the AI, there's a product called Akio, AKKIO. And
How do you
what it
spell that? Sorry.
AKK, two Ks,
Okay.
IO.
Okay.
Um, It's almost like Power BI met AI. We'll probably see Power BI adopt this. It's very narrow. It doesn't tell you the weather. It doesn't unless you put weather into it.
Hmm.
It takes your data, which is great because now you're not pumping your data into who
Hmm.
knows where. And by narrowing it down, it really allows us to focus on what our data is telling us versus what the world's data is telling the world. Because we don't really always need to know the world. So I think that's one of the exciting things that we're going to see that will jump that gap into healthcare. Um, Unfortunately, I think a lot of healthcare companies have already adopted AI in a way that our healthcare data, apparently, rumor has it, has just been pumped into models,
Mm.
which is,
Great,
I know it's a very dark
great.
rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. Hopefully not. But there is, we have a lot of, there's the FERPA, the Educational Records Protection Act. There's HIPAA. There's
Hmm.
GDPR. That urged privacy currently is in direct conflict with AI models, and so we're going to see a narrowing. That we're going to see the same thing in blockchain. That balance between transparency and immutability by adding in ZK, zero knowledge
Right.
rollups and zero knowledge proofs, we're going to be able to see people do business bids or healthcare records or whatever that is contained and not accessible to everyone. We'll know it's there, we'll know it's accurate, but we won't be able to open the folder essentially and
Right.
see everybody's stuff.
Hmm.
So those are, I guess, if I had to summarize that, which I probably should learn to do more, is that balance between privacy and utility is going to be really something we're going to see explode the next 2 years.
Right. All right. Okay. Last question before we wind down. How would you finish this sentence for me? Most clients just don't understand.
Wow, that's a
Yeah, I get the easy part of the question, and then everyone else gets the hard part. That's how it works.
well, you can tell that my summarization tools are all kicking in simultaneously. Wow, how do we distill this down? Um, in a way, I would say they don't understand marketing as a large concept that
Hmm.
is made up of sub pieces. Um, Most clients don't understand that their belief is limiting. Um, so that all marketing is not marketing and sales are friends, hopefully, uh, but they are different. Um, Growth marketing is not the same as performance marketing, is not the same as social media marketing, though they may overlap. So being comfortable with that ambiguity is something that I think most clients don't understand is that you have to be able to jump into marketing as a wiggly, wobbly, gelatinous, uh, free rushing stream that sometimes isn't free rushing and sometimes isn't a stream. So it's a constantly changing metaphor of function that is informative, but also it listens. I think that's. I don't know if I answered your question in any
No, that's
coherent
it.
way,
That's good.
or
Yeah.
I've just
Uh,
mixed metaphors and babble. Um,
okay. So this has been great. I love the open ended question formats because people have such interesting experiences and backgrounds. Who should be contacting you these days, and how should they be doing it?
um, One of the things I think is great about working with startups is that I'm able to talk to them before they send their pitch decks out. And I think that is somewhere that
Mm,
I like people to contact me because I find it the most exciting phase of business. Those early steps about just like, hey, we need to boil down to team, traction, timing, TAM. What does that mean? And really
right.
turning that into a story. I spend a lot of my time listening to pitches and reviewing pitch decks. And so I think anybody that is just on that cusp of getting that big investment. Sometimes I tell people that they need to wait and get some revenue under their belt and see if they want that investment.
Yeah.
It's always a trade off. So I think those are the people that one of the things about being in the industry for a while is you've been knocked around a bit and learned a few things, got a few bruises still. Um, so being able to companies that maybe want to skip ahead and avoid a few of those bruises, some of them are unavoidable.
Very
That would
good.
be a good client for me.
And LinkedIn is the way to get to you.
LinkedIn, I try to stay active on LinkedIn as much as I can without being too much. Um, Again, it's a tricky balance, but
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Vincent. This has
thank you
been
very much.
fantastic. You never know when someone's going to show up. I'll be honest with you. It's been almost 200 guests, and every time I'm like, how's this going to go? But people are pretty great. And you did fantastic. Thanks very much for this.
Oh, good. I try to stay spontaneous, but also have a few notes just in case I lost my train of thought.
Well, I appreciate that. And oh, well, so thanks, Vincent. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. There are lots of them and lots of them. See you soon.